a world where film, television, video games, technology, toys, lawnmowers, dark matter.
Wait a minute. Lawnmowers, dark matter?
Oh, sorry. Where most of those things meet, one podcast stands alone, going behind the scenes.
Hold on to your butts.
I love it when a plan comes together.
You're listening to the Mediajuice podcast.
Hello, Media Juicers. Can I say that? If people listen, are they Media Juicers? I guess.
Can I order one of those on Amazon?
Wait a minute. I guess I am a Media Juicer. If you're listening, then you're a listener. Anyway, welcome to the Mediajuice podcast. I am here, Jeremy Sneed, founder and creative director here at Mediajuice Studios, with my podcast producer, Jeremiah Isley.
Hey, Media Juice drinkers.
Wait a minute.
Is that? I don't know.
I don't even know.
I don't think we should call people drinkers. That's probably not a good thing.
I mean, our tagline for the podcast, One Juicy Podcast, we talked about, I'm like, well, we had film, television, gaming in there. And I was like, that sounds too serious. Let's just make it One Juicy Podcast.
Right? I like it.
But this episode is One Juicy Podcast. I'm looking forward to talking with my pal David Eddings. David, if you don't know, is the voice of the beloved character ClapTrap in the series Borderlands. David and I go way back, and he's doing fun stuff with Rooster Teeth now. We're going to have him come on and talk with him about all things Gearbox, ClapTrap, Rooster Teeth. David's a really cool guy. He's probably one of the most connected guys I know in the video game industry. I mean, it's crazy.
He drops a lot of names in the interview.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
in a cool way. I'm not calling him out for that, but
for
yeah,
sure.
I was like, "Well, hey, check that out."
I mean, it's like I feel cool. Like if I'm like, "Oh, cool! I got into the Entertainment Weekly party at Comic-Con, or I got into the IGN party," and sure enough, David's there. I'm like, okay, I thought I was cool, but David's always cooler,
right?
So we're going to be talking with him, and what else? What else do we have up on the podcast?
Oh, so we are going to talk a little bit about something going on with you in Texas Tech, and
yes.
Looking forward to hearing that. We're also going to talk about Dreamhack Denver.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, you'll be screening out some stuff out there and doing a panel and all that fun stuff. And of course, we'll be taking some script notes and answering communiques from the listeners.
I like the word communiques. Communiques from the listeners. That's like the title of something. I don't know. It's communiques.
I think I have that album.
So yeah, it should be fun.
What do you say we dive into this one?
So we're going to put them into a house and see what happens.
That's a $7 word right there.
Of course, that's also how you burn Pong into your screen on the TV.
It is a classic esports tournament.
Well, here we are once again in the green room, and joining us today is David Eddings. You may know him as the lovable voice of ClapTrap from the Borderlands franchise. He's also done some work with Gearbox and is currently with Rooster Teeth. And David, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, David. So, David, for those who don't know you and I's relationship, can you give people a primer, a very quick intro as to how you and I know each other and how that's evolved over the years?
A long time ago, I was at a company called Gathering of Developers, and when we sold the company to Take-Two, I started a toy company. I was asked to consult for FUNimation. So that's where you and I met. We met at FUNimation when you were doing licensing. And,
that's right.
And then I left FUNimation, did the Radioactive Clown thing for a little while. You and I kept in touch. And then when I went to Gearbox back in 2005, you were just getting Mediajuice started around that time. And we've just been friends ever since.
Yeah.
since what, I think 2001 or maybe 2002 is when we first met.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves. Well, and I should say too, aside from the business and industry connections, David mentioned Radioactive Clown and has obviously worked in your work with Gearbox in licensing. You've done a lot of collectibles and 6 scale, 4th scale figures, and I'm a big collector as well. Sideshow, Hot Toys, Mondo. So we have that in common as well. I don't know who's got the bigger collection, but
well, I am constantly culling my collection because I just run out of space, and I give a lot of things away. In fact, I'm in my office here at Rooster Teeth. I have 2 Titanfall 2 collector's edition helmets that Vince Zampella sent me. I have a Gears of War 4 Lancer because I just moved to Austin. I've got all this stuff, and even when I had a huge office with a giant trophy wall plus my office at home, I was still running out of room. So I'm always giving things away to folks that I think would enjoy it. I don't like to just say, hey, here's a bunch of stuff. But if somebody likes something or I know they're the right person for it, then I will give some stuff away constantly. But I like to keep the things that are really, really special to me. And those things are generally the stuff that I made or the stuff that I had something to do with. And then the things that my friends made. And if they gave it to me as a personal gift, then I like to keep those. And then there's a lot of other stuff that we just acquire. And those are the things that are right. I tend to be a little bit easier to part with.
Well, and every time, I go to David's house or his office at Gearbox, it's like, okay, what's new? What's new on the wall? What's new on his desk? Who gave, where'd you get it from? Because I'm such a collector. And actually, you guys came over and did an advanced screening of Videogames the movie before it came out, a good 6 months, if not longer. And I got to give you a tour of my room, which actually since then, my collector's room has grown quite a bit. I'm starting to run out of space, so now we can compare available space.
Oh yeah, man. I love walking into somebody's office that is a collector like I am and seeing all the cool stuff. A lot of times you see similar pieces or the same things, but then there's always those pieces that you can tell that's really, really unique to this particular friend or whatever. But it's I don't go shopping anymore. I don't get to do that. Not that I don't get to, I just don't. And so I'm not always aware of everything that's out. And oftentimes I find out about stuff because my friends have it or because they're interested in it, and that's a cool way to connect. I mean, don't we all like to talk about our hobbies anyway? So it's always fun.
That's right. Well, so for the listeners that don't know, talk about what you're doing at Rooster Teeth right now. And I know you did business development at Gearbox. I was the VP of Biz Dev and licensing and strategic partnerships. And at Gearbox, I got to do like the movie deals and some publishing deals and all the toy and book and comic book deals and things like that. Lots of fun. And, of course, doing a little voice acting here and there for a couple of characters in the games. But at Rooster Teeth, I am here as the head of game publishing, and I'm building a publishing arm for Rooster Teeth. And we're just getting started. I've been here all of 2 months now. And I've already got a couple of games that I've identified that we're going to sign, and we're in the process of doing. And we're going to start small, and we want to start organically as well. We want to do this thing right. It's not just about publishing games. It's about finding the tone and that voice, right? And then I want to fit that. So I'm the one adapting to Rooster Teeth. I'm not making Rooster Teeth adapt to me by any means. And when we're publishing these games, it's I want to make sure that we can build shows around them too, because that's kind of what Rooster Teeth does, right? They build a lot of content or create a lot of content, and some of that content is playing video games. In fact, Rooster Teeth created the Let's Play videos. They were the first one. So that and also some of the cartoons that we do and the live action stuff, whatever. And there's a lot that can be done around video games and around video game brands, and we're going to develop some of those brands. And you may not be able to talk about this, but if you can, are the games more Telltale style or more Gearbox style, or can you say?
Well, right now I haven't signed a single one yet, so it's all those and more.
Yes.
It's the potential is great and huge, and the reality is I'm spending time right now figuring out who the employees are here and who I'm literally meeting some of these folks for the first time, and not even here at the office. I've met a lot of folks, at E3 that I worked with that I haven't even met at the office yet here in Austin. But here's what I do know: the games that I'm looking for are games that will be able to do a few of these things that I'm going to list. Build a show around, like with the Let's Play stuff, with Achievement Hunters and Funhouse. Build a cartoon around, even, create a cartoon around a particular property or brand, or maybe even a live action show. But it also needs to be fun. The tone for Rooster Teeth to me seems to be that wacky, crazy kind of attitude,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that there's room for many independent publishers, not just Rooster Teeth, but like Versus Evil. They're a fantastic independent publisher, and there's a number of others that I really like. And everybody can have their voice and their games, and we're not really stepping on each other's toes. Now, I'm interested in building the category, and what we're seeing right now, especially in AA games, is that there's a lot of innovation that can happen when there's smaller budgets and it's a smaller risk. You can do more things, right? What I won't be doing is probably the Gearbox style games, because those games these days cost $60 million. It takes 300 people, and 2.5 to 3 years to make. We're going to look at cool, kick-ass games that strike a certain tone, that are replayable, that we can build those shows around, whether that's the Achievement Hunters or the Funhouse or whatever. Maybe not just one, but maybe a couple of them. And again, I think that doing live action and animated shows as well around particular properties can be very viable.
And I mean, knowing you and your experience and your lineage in the industry, it makes all the sense in the world to me, because you understand intellectual property and licensing and building content. So I think the Rooster Teeth guys don't know what's coming in a good way.
Well, they have an inkling, I think, and I'll be the first to admit, I only understand up to a point, and that's what I know. And we're in a new world now, and it's exciting. It's to me, it feels like the industry did 20 years ago when I jumped in the business. The last game that we published at Gathering of Developers was Max Payne, and the original budget for Max Payne was $2 million, and it ballooned up to $4 million.
$4 million.
Now, if we think about that today, and that budget seems really small for a video game, even one like Max Payne, right? Like $4 million for Max Payne, that sounds really low, right? And the reality is that we weren't sure we were going to make our money back on it.
Mm-hmm.
We thought it was a great game. It was a great game, and but before we released it, everybody's a little bit nervous. I mean, man, this budget just kept going up and up and up, and are we going to make it? Because we were just selling PC back then, and it was Rockstar that took that game and they published it on console. But it was, we were biting our nails, and we ended up, Mike and Harry and the partners ended up selling it, right before Max Payne was released. But and I think Mike even mentioned, he said, if we'd have known it was going to do this, because we might have not sold so soon. But
Right.
But that just shows you what the industry was like back then. And now, a Max Payne game, and I don't know what Max Payne 3 cost or anything like that, but if they were to make another Max Payne game, we're talking about, minimum $40 to $50 million is what the customer is going to expect, that sort of quality and that much content. That said, there's a lot of fun games that you can make for $2 million, today even, and or even less. I think the average AA budget right now is about $2.3 million, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, that's just going to increase over time. Next year the average will be slightly higher. But there's been new categories that have been created, and we're in a world now, especially with digital distribution and YouTube and so on, where you can actually sell a game, be very successful. And it doesn't even have to be a finished game. I mean, look at Friday the 13th and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds right now. I think those are still in development, right?
Yeah.
And they're kicking ass, and they're fun, and it doesn't have to be a huge production anymore. And I think gamers realize that.
Well, and it's interesting coming from the kind of a documentarian perspective. we talked to a lot of the developers and professors and kind of graduating grad students at LA Film School and New York Film Academy that now have game design schools. Just their whole philosophy in teaching, game theory and game design is a lot about, it's what you're talking about. They start with the fundamentals of make a game on paper, like what would this look like as a board game? And then now let's flesh it out into, okay, you could add this, and bigger could be better, but bigger is not by default better. Sometimes you find kind of diamonds in the rough, but it sounds like that's Rooster Teeth. You've got a brand, at least I hate to sound so corporate, but like a brand message, like what the personality you want the games to be. So that's
and I'm still learning. I'm still learning about what that is. I have to admit that I haven't seen all of Rooster Teeth's content. Certainly was very aware of Red versus Blue when it came out. I mean, after all, they were using Gearbox's version of Halo to create that.
Oh, were they really?
Oh yeah, they had the PC version. Of course, they wouldn't have been able to do that on the Xbox.
That's right. The PC version that Gearbox did.
That's right. And to Gearbox's credit, it was not just a port. I mean, Gearbox definitely created content that ended up in the console version. Their maps and the network code was the multiplayer network code was created by Gearbox. So certainly Gearbox was a co-developer on that. Awesome. But that said, that's what we all knew about Red versus Blue. I mean, good golly, Bernie Burns used to work at Origin where Aaron Tebow worked, and called him boss, and so we were very aware of this small group of guys that were doing this Red versus Blue thing, and we were all busy making games, and quite frankly, weren't really spending a lot of time watching the content that people were creating with the assets that were that's Gearbox created. Rooster Teeth is a lot more than just Red versus Blue, and I was surprised to find out exactly all the shows that they do, things that I had seen and wasn't even aware that it was Rooster Teeth, like slow-mo guys. I was like, wow, I didn't know that was Rooster Teeth at all. And I was having dinner the other night with a doctor and his wife, and they were asking what Rooster Teeth was, and I was explaining a little bit, and then I mentioned Ruby, that anime, RWBY, Ruby, whatever. And they're like, oh, yeah, we watch Ruby. But they had no idea what Rooster Teeth was. But they totally just geeked out on the fact that we created Ruby and produced that. So, but there's some new stuff coming out, too, that's really exciting to me, like Genlock, which was announced recently, which is a cool sci-fi, I would say, Evangelion-style cartoon. Obviously, the Ruby stuff is really popular, and we're doing games for that, too. I'm the one right now that's trying to figure out exactly how I adapt, not how the company adapts to me or whatever. I want to give the audience what they're looking for, and not try to force feed them anything. You can't force people to love what you do, or what you make or anything like that. But what I do want to do is I want to figure out exactly what our audience wants, and I want to get that. That's
great. Well, we live in a niche world, so it's finding that niche. Yeah. That's the right approach.
Yeah. So do you think, you talked about finding games that shows can be created on and characters can be created into more content. Is there any properties that Rooster Teeth has right now that you've considered turning into a game, like kind of going the opposite way with that?
Well, Ruby is a video game. There's Ruby Grim Eclipse, and I would imagine that we'll be doing more of those.
Okay.
But that would certainly make a lot of sense, right? Especially since it's a popular property of ours. The other games other shows that we might make a game around, I'm not exactly sure. And again, I've been here all of 2 months, and out of the last 2 months, sure. I've probably been in the office maybe like 15 days because of E3 and San Diego ComicCon and moving to Austin and all the business trips too. So I'm still learning, and I certainly don't want to commit to anything and then,
have to eat my words later on. Now.
Yeah. I tell you what, we're going to do Bernie Burns and Matt Hullum the game, and then throw some Jeff Ramsey in there, and it'll be awesome. That's exactly the wrong approach, actually. That would be a terrible thing. Not because those guys couldn't do it, but because it would feel like we're just exploiting the customer. And that's the last thing I want to do is to exploit the customer.
I'm trying to, in every episode here, as I'm talking with people that I've known in front of the camera, behind the camera, and I'm absolutely putting you on the spot here. So, is there a story that you can recall, again, in front of the camera, behind the camera, in our business relationship, that you think the listeners would find interesting? That's funny. That's interesting. That's something that's happened between us. So, Mediajuice, our projects together, Gearbox, all of our years knowing each other. Is there anything comes to mind?
I'll give you something that, yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding?
Okay.
So I'll tell you, and it was fairly recent too, because I really had a blast with this. And I talk about this too, because I don't know if you know this or not. You were there. You may not have been paying attention because you were setting up and you were going to be interviewing a lot of folks at the National Video Game History Museum. But I am undefeated on Giant Pong. And I beat Palmer Luckey. I beat Palmer Luckey at Giant Pong. I beat Vince Zampella at Giant Pong. I beat Cliff Blazinski at Giant Pong, and he was the closest game. I think I beat him by 1 point.
I saw you out of the corner of my eye, but I didn't know you were playing all those people.
Oh yeah, I was kicking their asses. Partly because when Pong came out, I was alive, and mostly I think I'm older than most of the guys. Certainly older than Palmer, and I know I'm older than Cliffy. Vince and I might be around the same age, but yeah, I was kicking ass on Giant Pong, and wow. Palmer, when I beat him, just turned and walked away. Because good game, and I put my hand out, and he just turned around and walked away.
Oh, he wasn't having
pissed.
it. Well, and just to give people context too, David's talking about a shoot that we did last year at the National Video Game Museum for my series Unlocked, which David's in, and talks to Penn Jillette about his career, and we had a whole day of interviews with all of these developers, as David mentioned, Vince Zampella of Call of Duty fame and Titanfall now, and Cliff Blazinski, and it went on and on. That was a pretty epic day, but unbeknownst to me, there was also an epic Pong match going on. I wish I would have shot that. That would have been a whole episode.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Lauren Blazinski took a few pictures of me and Vince, so that you could see our faces as, in the expression. What was funny too, as I was having to show people, there is no pause in this game. And when I was young, if you wanted to pause your Pong game, you had to agree with the other person that you would find a way to make the ball, or the little ball just go completely horizontal. So you had to keep your paddle just right, so that there would be no angle on it whatsoever. And you could, once it just was going back and forth, left and right, you could walk away as long as you wanted. As long as nobody touched the game, you could walk away and come back to it. So I remember being a kid, and I'm playing with a friend, and my mom's like, "It's lunchtime, or you got to come do this, whatever." And it's like, "Oh, give us a moment," and we would just try to both working in tandem, get it so that we could pause it. We could walk away an hour later, come back, still going. Of course, that's also how you burn Pong into your screen on the TV.
Yeah, the original screen burn. So I actually saw that we were both at San Diego ComicCon a few weeks ago. We were kind of two ships passing in the night, but you got to go on Cliffy B's big dumb yacht party thing. I saw some pictures that looked pretty cool.
Which is interesting, because I was actually on Justin Roiland's guest list, not Cliff's. Which is fine. But I mean, there's no reason to put, once I was invited by Justin, there's no reason for Cliff to put me on there. That's just,
Sure.
But yeah, that was the second year in a row for the Big Dumb Yacht Party. And it was a lot of fun. I ended up hanging out with Liam Cunningham, and who was Sir Davos on Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And here's something funny. His daughter takes programming lessons from Brenda Romero in Ireland. So we figured that out, and then we got a picture of us and sent it over to Brenda, and like, hey, it's so-and-so's dad. And then Weird Al Yankovic was on the boat, and I got to chat with him for a long time. He was photobombing everybody. It was great.
Wow.
Really cool dude. And that guy must bathe in the blood of virgins, because he does not age at all.
He
really freaky.
He is remarkably young looking for his age.
I think it's all the clean living, which personally is a terrible price to pay for looking young.
But it pays off. It must be working, right?
I guess. But do you really want to live that long if you can't like live it up? So I don't know. With Weird Al, that was like the biggest thing for me because as a kid, it's like, man, I listened to his music. Even in the era that I wasn't allowed to listen to rock and roll music, I could listen to Weird Al because it didn't have any bad lyrics in there, that sort of thing. And I even told him that I was like, I actually know your songs better than the original songs that you based them off of them. So some of them,
Do you know is he a gamer? What was his connection to Cliff and Lauren?
Well, no, I think his connection was probably to Alex Hirsch and Justin Roiland. If I'm not mistaken, he may have done some stuff on Gravity Falls or whatever, or, he just, because it was three guys that were throwing the party. It was Alex Hirsch, who does Gravity Falls on the Disney Channel. He's the creator of that. And then Justin, who does Rick and Morty.
Weird Al has a show on Disney XD too. It's the Milo Murphy's Law show. And he's
well, then there you go.
So that's probably where that connection is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I always think it's so interesting. You get some of the best, relationships, and then also just potential projects and collaborations that come out of that mixture of like, take some people from the video game industry, some people from movies, some people from TV, and just let them all mix together and good things come. That's been my experience.
Well, it's funny because, we forget, especially in video games, because, most of us in video games aren't out in Hollywood. And I would, certainly there's plenty of them out in California now, but in my industry, the part that I grew up in, or I grew up in my career in, I guess, video games, first person shooter games or whatever, that was all created here in the Dallas area. Mm-hmm. And I say here, I'm in Austin right now, but it was created in, Garland and Mesquite, Duke Nukem, and, Doom,
Quake,
and, yeah. And so we're in Mesquite, Garland, the Dallas area. And that is that's so far away from Hollywood. So we're, to be sheltered. We work inside, we work a lot. We don't really get to meet our fans, as now we do. But back then it wasn't common. We didn't have PAX Prime or any of the PAXs or anything like that, these shows. And so, the only way that you knew your fans liked it is if it was selling, right? And but then as the industry grows and as more people play games, and we find out that a lot of our fans are actors, athletes, directors, folks that have downtime, and might be in their trailer playing a game or on the road, going from going to the next football game or basketball game or whatever. And you've met a lot of celebrities and that love video games, and
sure,
that's actually true. Very encouraging to me, because I think that we're finally going to be able to have some good video game movies or video game based movies, because the directors that are going to be directing them grew up playing video games.
Yeah, we were just talking about, I've been friends with Ernie Cline for a few years, and we text and geek out on different things that are happening in pop culture, and of course. Meanwhile, in the background, he's, the Ready Player One movie deal is happening. And then, I saw him at Comic-Con. We kind of exchanged nods as he walked by literally with Steven Spielberg on the way to the Warner Brothers booth to sign autographs. And I just thought, how crazy is it? I met this guy 4 years ago. Went to his house and recorded his interview for Video Games the Movie. We've been good friends since. He's came to premieres. We've hung out in Austin, and now he's literally sitting by Steven Spielberg signing autographs at Comic-Con. It's like, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love that
cool?
success story.
So cool. And man, I love Ernie Cline too. And I've not met him personally. He follows me on Twitter, and I follow him on Twitter, but he came by the Gearbox office once, and I was not there that day. I was traveling, but my son and I both, he's one of our favorite authors, right? We, it's really cool to, I love Ready Player One's fantastic. And of course, I'm definitely looking for the movie. But here's the thing. Spielberg was a fan of ours too. Spielberg was a fan of the Brothers in Arms.
Oh, wow.
And would come by the Brothers in Arms booth at E3, along with, who else was a fan of Brothers in Arms was Robin Williams. He came to our booth and would ask us specifically about like the characters. He like not just the main character, but like other characters. Like they definitely knew it. There's a lot of folks that love video games, and it's really cool to finally be able to get that sort of credibility that we're actually entertainment as well.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you're on a time schedule, so we don't want to keep you too long, but we wanted to thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Before we let you go, is there anything you wanted to plug, or where can people find you online if they want to connect with you or tweet at you? Or
So you can find me on Twitter. It's at David Eddings. And you can find me on Instagram, which I think is david.eddings. I'm just now starting to learn how to do Instagram, but you'll see some really cool pictures there. And if you want to find me, you can. I'm here at Rooster Teeth. I'm here in Austin. We do the RTX. I'm going to be at the next one. If you do ever see me in public, by all means, please come up and shake my hand. I love meeting fans and fellow gamers and people that are just interested in the same stuff I'm interested in. And I'm also interested in showing people that there's a pathway to this industry. So if anybody ever has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thanks, David. We appreciate your time, brother.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. And you guys have a great day.
Sure thing. Take
you
care.
too, man. Talk to you later.
Cheers.
We are tonight's entertainment.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
You can't handle the truth.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Well, it's time to peel back the curtain and take a peek behind. I don't know. Peel, I was going for the juice thing. I don't know.
No, it's good. I like it. Anything to do with fruit and juice seems to work on paper, so why not on podcast?
Right, we'll just run with it. So, what's going on with Texas Tech? You like my note literally just says Texas Tech, so I'm very curious to hear what's going on.
Yeah. So, some people may know I grew up in West Texas. It's a little town outside of Lubbock called Levelland. Literally, the word level and land put together, and it was named that for exactly the reason you would think. It is very level, and it is a land. So Lubbock, outside of Levelland, is home to Texas Tech University, and they reached out to us a few months ago and needed I guess you'd call it a recruitment video for their Texas Tech School of Law, which is I could go into all the statistics, but let's just say it's Texas Tech School of Law is very impressive. They've won a lot of accolades, and their criminal clinics and advocacy. That's harder to say in the middle of a sentence.
That's a $7 word right there.
Their advocacy programs are sort of world renowned, or at least renowned in Texas and America. So we got to work with them, scouted their campus, which is just gorgeous, brought all of our fun camera toys, jibs and Steadicams, and got really beautiful shots of the campus and of Texas Tech School of Law. And we just finished producing, and I think it should be live by the time this podcast comes out, another Anatomy of a Trailer, which is kind of our behind the scenes series here at Mediajuice, where we talk about everything that went into the production of that video, which is fun. I think it's like you and I talk about all the trailers that we make here, and not surprisingly, they're video game trailers for the most part. They have been, and we brought on Amazon the first part of the year, so now it's game trailers, movie trailers, television spots for television series, and we also have a couple of corporate clients, which is the same but different. It's kind of like, you're an audio engineer, that it doesn't matter if you're recording a rock band or recording a interview. Audio is audio, but there are differences within those genres of how you approach the work.
Sure.
And I think it's similar here. So it's kind of fun to like put on a different hat of like, oh, we're going to shoot a video for a university. This is okay. We're still going to need to plan it, script it, get the interviews we need, get B-roll, but it just takes a little bit of a different outlook and kind of a step back creatively, which initially is always like, oh, we can't just go on the rails that we're normally on here to whiteboard something and come up, have a creative session on a movie trailer or a game trailer. It kind of takes putting on a different hat. To be honest.
Yeah, stretching yourself a little bit.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. The whole team enjoyed it. So I think by the time this comes out, people can watch both the Anatomy of a Trailer for Texas Tech Law School and the video itself. So I think it's fun. If you want to see something that we've done that's a little bit different, a little bit out of our wheelhouse, but I think came together really well, then check that video out on the website.
So this week's cutscene is a dream hack. You're hacking dreams now. Is that what's going on?
That's right. Yeah. Well, Dreamhack for any gamers out there, any esports players or followers, is pretty popular. It's come about in the last couple of years, and it's just this sort of festival of gaming, and now they're expanding to screening for film and television. And we've done a lot of video production for Capcom, for Dreamhack, for the Capcom Pro Tour and Street Fighter. And it's always an awesome event. It's packed out, and it's going to be in Denver this year. I think it's second or third week in October. If you look on the Dreamhack website, Dreamhack Denver. And they just invited me to come and screen Unlocked, the documentary series we released in December. So I'll be there and screening Unlocked and doing a Q&A after. And I think that we're going to do a panel as well with myself. I'm going to try to bring in some other folks from some of the game companies that are in the series, like Capcom and a few others. But it'll depend, as always with these things, on availability.
Yeah.
So, but at the very least, it'll be a screening, and then the panel will have a lot of fun, kind of behind the scenes clips and excerpts that you won't see anywhere else. So if you are going to Dreamhack Denver, then check out Unlocked, and I'll be there as well. Should be fun.
Yeah. So it's more of like a convention then, or is it a tournament that's happening? Or
I think both. I think it's
okay.
I think they're doing booths, like exhibitor booths, and it's a tournament. So it is a classic esports tournament of, everything from Call of Duty to Street Fighter to, they don't do League of Legends because that's all Riot, but you name it, all the top esports games, they'll have a championship there and have awards and stuff. It sounds very vague, but the reason I'm not more specific about it is because a lot of times the players and the events and exactly what's happening doesn't get released until pretty close to the event, because they're still organizing availability, and I think they might tie in with other events and the rankings of players. But it's just a hype machine. All of these sort of up and coming esports conventions, tournaments like Dreamhack and Evo, and everything that Capcom's doing with those and other companies. You go and it's like, if you didn't know any better, it'd be, what is this the World Series? What's happening right now? So as a gamer and as a documentary filmmaker, it's cool for me to see. Literally even 5 years ago, when I was in the middle of making Video Games the Movie, it's like esports was like, oh yeah, there's kind of some people doing that. League of Legends, that's starting to get pretty big.
Right.
But now, just in the last 2 to 3 years, it's just exploded. And so these events like Dreamhack and Evo and others they're a lot of fun to go to. So I'm looking forward to going and being a part.
Well, we've come to that time of the show where you, the listeners, get to sound off and maybe have a question or two answered along the way. It is our script notes segment. And starting off with a post from Facebook is Lauren. She wrote in and she said, hey, are there any good documentaries on esports? We were just talking about esports with Dreamhack Denver earlier in this episode. So are there any documentaries about that out there coming soon? Maybe some inside track on any of that?
There are. I'm trying to think here. I know there's several on Street Fighter, some that are sanctioned, some that are unofficial on YouTube. I'm trying to think. I know there's this is like really old school and may not be answering her question, but do you remember that series on MTV called MTV True Life?
Yeah.
It was like it was like the real world happened and they started to do different spinoffs, and MTV True Life was like late 90s, early 2000s. There was an episode of that, but I think it's like 2 hours which I guess would qualify as a feature, documentary feature.
Sure.
And it's called MTV True Life, I Am a Gamer. And I have that saved. I downloaded it and kept a digital copy on my hard drive because, sometimes these videos on YouTube get flagged and taken down. So, a lot of times I'll just grab it and have it for posterity.
Right.
I love it because, all the TVs that they're playing on, are these square CRT monitors. And so it's like that alone is nostalgia for me as a kid of the 80s and 90s. But seeing them play like the first Marvel versus Capcom game, or like the original Xbox, which I think it was Xbox. I know they had PlayStation 1. Now that I say that, it may not have been in Xbox era. But it's these guys that they put into a house like before like professional gaming was even a thought. They were like, well, these guys are all quote unquote pro gamers. So we're going to put them into a house and see what happens. So that's kind of... And
they sit around and play video games.
And they play video games. And there is drama that comes out of it. Like this one guy's like...
Oh, sure.
He's really good at playing this golf game, but his real dream is to be a professional golfer. And so they'll show him golfing in real life and then show him golfing as in the game. And it's, as a producer, I'm looking from behind the curtain, no pun intended. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I know some producer got in there and was like, what's this game you're playing? Golf? Oh, hey, what if we did this? Do you golf in real life? And he's like, yeah, kind of. What if your dream in life was to become a pro golfer? That would just make for great TV. Let's do it. And he's like, oh, okay. And, maybe it is legitimate. I don't know.
Right. But the whole manufacturing a storyline for better TV.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like, we got to get out of this apartment. So you like to golf, right?
Yeah. And I see the producing of it, and it's kind of that part I like. But to answer the question, that's a very long-winded way of answering the question. That's one that's really old school. There's a couple of others, I think on Red Bull, they have their own channel. They've got one called Fighting Dreams, and it's about Street Fighter and professional Street Fighter players, and it's very well produced and very entertaining. And the only other one that comes to mind, and I'm sure there's tons of others, there's one called The King of Chinatown. And if you just Google or YouTube that, it's about this guy that became a champion.
Over on Twitter, The Gaming Outsider said, you can tweet at them. You can find them at the GoCast. Said, thanks for a great interview. Okay, that's not really a question, but hey, thanks for the great interview.
Yeah. Those guys interviewed me several times over the last few years and reached out, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, something like that. And they're big fans of my work, and they're, if you watch if you listen to their podcast, they really break down everything that's happening in gaming. And so, if anything, that's a good plug for those guys. Cause The Gaming Outsider, you can find them on Twitter and iTunes. And I think it's episode 158. They sent me a link to it. I'm there in that episode talking about my career and answering their questions. So it's fun. Yeah. Check out The Gaming Outsider. They're good guys.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Well, we're going to jump back over to Facebook real quick, and Sharon wrote a little note, and she's calling you out a little bit. She says, I enjoy your Save the Cat videos, but I think you've got it wrong on Back to the Future.
Oh yeah. She is calling me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get this a lot in the I shouldn't say a lot. But every now and then we'll see a comment pop up on one of these Save the Cat videos that we did. And for those who don't know, Save the Cat is a book that came out about 10 years ago about screenwriting. It's how to write a screenplay sort of in these classic screenwriting beats, like, the opening, the setup, the A character, the B characters, the break into act one, the fun and games, the setups, the payoffs, the literally the save the cat moment, which is like the moment in any story where a hero kind of endears himself to the audience. And many times, I think we talked about this on another episode. Many times it is actually a hero saving a cat.
Yes.
And so we did a series of tribute videos for Blake Snyder, who passed away a few years back, and just more of a, for me, that was a book that really inspired me as a filmmaker. And I thought, in our downtime here at the studio, while we're not producing trailers or we're in between deadlines with clients, we would kind of tinker on these Save the Cat tribute videos. So there's 10 of them that are available on our website and on the Mediajuice YouTube. And we basically picked 10 of my favorite movies, which not surprisingly are like from the 80s and 90s. I think Back to the Future, Top Gun, Aliens, there's quite a few on there. And we just break down, all of the classic Save the Cat beats. And we have comments like this every now and then, like, oh, you say that the break into Act 3 on Aliens is when their ship crashes and they're stranded, and they, Newt has to, they kind of go into their own, what they think it should be, which I think is great. It's like, hey, you know what? These are the beats that we think follow this structure. But if it gets people engaged and saying, no, I think it's this, the whole point of it is kind of as a tribute, but also as a tutorial on screenwriting. And anyone who's done any writing knows, yes, there's plenty of tutorials and how-tos out there for writing, for painting, for filmmaking, for anything, but you really have to make it your own. And that's the old cliche of, write what you know. And if what you know or what you think is different than what I think, well, hey, that's what makes you unique. And I love that. So I kind of smile actually when I see comments like this, because I'm like, great, good for you. That's your opinion, and that means you're watching the videos and that you're engaging and that you're hopefully out there creating. If people are just criticizing for criticizing's sake, that's another thing. But the point of those videos is to get fellow creators engaged, I think. Yeah,
and I think if nothing else, like you said, it's thought provoking. So if people are thinking and even more critically just about film, I think that does the industry a service, because maybe there are not so many folks that'll just kind of blindly swallow whatever is being thrown at them by Hollywood and filmmakers and stuff just to, to cash in. They're critically thinking about the entertainment that they take in and the storytelling that takes place. So, so I think it's a win all the way around. With that, we're going to put a wrap on this episode. Really want to thank David Eddings for coming on the show with us today. Just a very cool conversation, lots of cool stuff. Looking forward to see what comes out of Rooster Teeth with him on board.
It's always an adventure with David. He didn't say a lot of what he's going to be doing. I know, because he's, like he said, he's just getting started there. But believe me, in the coming months or whatever the time frame is, there's going to be big announcements from Rooster Teeth. I know, because David is he's a mover, he's a shaker, he's where he's at for a reason. So I pay attention to Rooster Teeth.
Yeah. Keep the radar tuned in there, right? Again, if you want to write in, if you have something you just are dying to get off your chest and you want to contact us, you can always do that at Twitter, which is @MediajuiceTwit. You can email us, the good old email, at mediajuicepodcast@gmail.com. And of course, Facebook is facebook.com/Mediajuice Studios. And of course, the hub of all things Mediajuice is MediajuiceStudios.com.
Yeah, that's really, if you forget everything else and you want to find anything that we've talked about, MediajuiceStudios.com has, links to everything that we're talking about. The podcast, the blog, the Twitter, it's funny, I say the Twitter, sound like a redneck. I got the Twitter. But yeah, MediajuiceStudios.com has all that stuff. So that's the easiest place to go and find everything.
All right. And with that, we're going to say thanks so much for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Again, always rating, review on iTunes is a great thing for us. Both positive and critical feedback we are very, very glad to receive. So if you don't mind clicking on a star and typing out a couple words, we really appreciate that.
Yes.
And we'll see you next time with another episode of the Mediajuice podcast.
Next time on the Mediajuice podcast comes Goku and Dragon Ball Z. No, just kidding. I don't know if that's the next podcast. See y'all next time.